To show us how Christ did this thing on our behalf, that it is through Christ having become a curse for us. That was explained in Galatians 2, verse 20. Christ became a curse under the law by becoming legally impure. Because as Paul now cites from Deuteronomy 21:23, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. He became legally impure for our sakes. Imagine that. God, the holiest being that could be, did this for us. Here Paul cites the substance of the Greek translation of the Old Testament passage, but he notably leaves off the words by God after cursed. Paul knew that Christ was not cursed by God when he was crucified. The law deemed Christ, as it were, as accursed by having subjected him to the type of death that a scoundrel would die. He died in fulfillment of the law, and in his death, the law then cast him out of its legal constraints by the type of death he died. Everybody got that? The legal constraints of the law cast Christ out because he became a curse for us. Thus, when we join to him, we are also cast out of the legal constraints of the law. The law has no power over us because of this. If the law is what brings sin, and if sin is the wages of death, then that means we can no longer be separated from God. We can no longer be imputed. We are no longer imputed sins, and therefore we cannot lose our salvation. If you just think it through very clearly, salvation by default must be eternal. Because if not, there's no hope for anybody. Nobody. Absolutely nobody. All right. The law has no power over us because of this. The word for tree here, zulon, means anything made of wood. A piece of wood, a club, a staff, the trunk of a tree, something used to support the crossbar of a cross and crucifixion, and so on. If a tree is that which gives life, and this is certainly what was on Paul's mind, then as Ignatius quotes, Christ was nailed up for our sakes, of which fruit are we? That is, the cross is regarded as a tree, and Christians are its fruit. You think of the symbolism. Christ died on the cross. He was cast out of the law because of it, and we are there being fruit to God because of Christ. The symbolism is extremely rich, and it points back to the very fall of man, where this was written in Genesis chapter 3. Hang on just a sec. Genesis chapter 3. Give me a moment. I'm going to have to get used to all these pages. It's going to take a while, but eventually we'll have it. Genesis chapter 3, and then in verse, one more page, 24, it says, So he drove out the man, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. The tree of life. It is Christ who is the life, and it is Christ who restores us to access to eternal life through his cross. It is the most amazing thing for us to consider. That hope in life which was lost is now again available through the death of Christ. If you think of it, the tree of life was taken away from man in Genesis 3. It's given back to man in its fulfillment in Revelation chapter, I think it's 21. I think it might be 20. Anyway, not 20 or 21. But right there in the middle of the Bible, Christ is in a garden, and he's suffering for us. So from a garden to a garden, and it happens in a garden. It's wonderful. The symbolism of the Bible is simply amazing.